Have you ever shaken someone's hand, heard their name, and exactly 3 seconds later, your mind goes completely blank? Trust me, welcome to the Overthinkers Club. You smile, you nod, and suddenly you realize you have absolutely no idea who you are talking to. It feels like a massive social failure, right? Today, Neo will decode exactly why our brains are so incredibly terrible at remembering names. Spoiler alert, it is definitely not because you are a bad person. Psychologists often refer to this everyday glitch as name amnesia. It happens to the smartest of us, especially when we are feeling slightly anxious or overwhelmed. For those of us who tend to overthink every little social interaction, this memory wipe happens even faster. We step into a room and our brain freezes. We often think our memory is like a perfect video recorder. We assume that if we hear something clearly, it automatically gets saved onto our mental hard drive. But that is a huge misconception. In reality, your memory is more like a highly selective bouncer at an exclusive club. It only lets important things in. When you meet someone new, your brain is instantly bombarded with a massive amount of data. It scans their face, their body language, and their tone. Your ancient survival instincts kick in immediately. The brain asks, is this person a friend or a threat? It prioritizes analyzing their smile over their name. Because of all this heavy background processing, the actual sound of their name gets pushed to the very bottom of the priority list. It just slips away. It leaves you standing there, nodding politely, while desperately scanning your brain for any clue. Was it John? Or maybe David? The awkwardness is truly real. But please, take a deep breath. Stop blaming yourself for having a goldfish memory. Your brain is actually doing exactly what it was evolved to do. To really understand this 3-second memory wipe, we need to take a journey inside the filing system of your mind. It is a fascinating, messy place. Deep inside your head lies a tiny seahorse-shaped structure called the hippocampus. You can think of this little busy guy as the temporary RAM of your mental computer. When a name enters this temporary workspace, it only has a few seconds to prove its worth. So, how does a name actually get saved forever? So the hippocampus acts like your computer's RAM. It holds on to short-term information just long enough for you to use it in the present moment. If a piece of information is deemed incredibly important, it gets transferred to the prefrontal cortex. You can think of this area as your permanent hard drive. But here is the catch. The connection between the temporary RAM and the permanent hard drive is very narrow. Not everything makes it through the tunnel. Your brain is naturally biased towards visual and emotional data. A person's face, a warm smile, or a threatening posture? That is considered high-priority survival information. When you look at someone, your visual cortex lights up instantly. You are processing thousands of tiny details without even consciously trying to do so. But a name like John or Sarah, is just a completely random string of sounds. It does not give you any visual clues. To your ancient survival brain, a name is totally abstract. It has no shape, no color, and most importantly, no immediate emotional weight to it. Without a visual hook or a strong emotional connection, the name just sits in your temporary memory, waiting for a reason to be permanently saved. And because your RAM has very limited space, it constantly auto-clears. If you do not actively repeat the name, it just gets deleted to make room. Imagine your brain literally tossing that file into a mental trash bin. It is not personal at all. It is just standard operating procedure for efficiency. This means that forgetting a name is a hardware limitation, not a character flaw. Your brain is just prioritizing visual safety over abstract auditory labels. So the next time you feel that wave of embarrassment wash over you, just remember, it is literally how the human operating system was designed. Faces are naturally glued to our memory because we evolved to recognize visual patterns. Names are a relatively new invention in the history of human evolution. To make a name stick, we have to manually build a bridge between the random sound and the visual data. It requires conscious, deliberate effort. But what happens when your brain is too busy panicking to make that effort? That brings us to the dreaded next in line effect. Let's find out. Picture this scenario. You are standing in a small circle of strangers. It is almost your turn to introduce yourself to the entire group. While the person standing right next to you is speaking, you are completely ignoring them. You are solely focused on your own upcoming performance. Your inner monologue is screaming, "What should I say? Do I sound completely weird? Should I smile more, or will that look too fake?" Psychologists call this common phenomenon the next in line effect. Your brain is basically switching entirely from an active recording mode into an anxious broadcasting mode. When you are preparing to speak, your cognitive load is so incredibly high that the brain simply refuses to take in any new external input. It is exactly like trying to download a massive file while simultaneously uploading a huge video. Your mental bandwidth gets completely overwhelmed and crashes. So when the person smiles and says, "Hi, I am Alex," that vital sound wave literally bounces right off your impenetrable mental shield of overthinking. The auditory information physically enters your ear, but it never actually reaches the hippocampus to be saved. The filing room door is already tightly closed. Then you confidently say your name out loud. You nailed the introduction. You successfully survived this terrifying social interaction like an absolute champion. But exactly 3 seconds later, you look back at Alex and a cold realization hits you. You have absolutely zero idea what they just said. And for us overthinkers, this frustrating effect is multiplied by 10. Our little nervous friend, anxiety, completely hijacks the entire mental operating system. Anxiety treats a very simple, harmless social introduction as if you are stepping onto a brightly lit stage in front of thousands of judging eyes. Your amygdala instantly triggers a mild fight-or-flight response, pumping cortisol into your bloodstream and completely clouding your fragile working memory in a dense fog. Your brain simply cannot multitask between preparing for imaginary social survival and memorizing a completely random, abstract string of syllables like a name. This explains why we fail to record the name. But what about the names we actually do hear, yet still forget instantly? Let's explore that. Welcome to one of the most fascinating concepts in cognitive psychology, famously known as the Baker-Baker paradox. It perfectly explains this frustrating everyday memory glitch. Imagine an experiment where two people meet a stranger. The first person is told, "This man is a baker." The second is told, "His name is Baker." Days later, researchers test their memory. The person who heard the profession baker remembers it perfectly, but the person who heard the name baker completely forgets. Why does this strange thing happen? The sounds of the words are exactly the same, but your brain treats them in two completely different ways. When you hear the profession baker, your brain instantly creates a massive web of vivid connections. It immediately imagines hot bread, an oven, and white flour. You can practically smell the freshly baked pastries in the air. This rich network of visual and sensory information acts like thick, sticky glue for memory. Your temporary memory easily grabs onto this sticky web. It neatly places the new file into a brain folder that already contains everything about warm bakeries. But when you hear the name Mr. Baker, none of those sensory connections fire up at all. A name is just an isolated, floating, meaningless label. It does not connect to the smell of bread or the warmth of an oven. It is just a lonely piece of audio floating in the dark. Without those connecting strings, there is nothing for your memory to physically hold on to. The name just slips right through the mental net and disappears completely. This is exactly why you might remember that the person you just met loves golden retrievers, but their actual name remains an absolute mystery to you. You can vividly recall that they work in accounting and just traveled to Japan, yet you still have to awkwardly call them my good friend. Our brain is fundamentally an associative learning machine. It learns best by attaching new, unknown information to old, familiar concepts that already securely exist in your head. Names simply do not provide those automatic mental hooks. So unless you actively build a deliberate bridge yourself, the name will always fall into the abyss. And just when you think your memory cannot get any worse, there is another emotional factor that ruins your chances. Let us talk about social pressure. When you are introduced to someone new, there is often a hidden expectation. Society demands that you immediately prove you are polite, friendly, and perfectly attentive. For overthinkers, this tiny social pressure feels like a massive theatrical spotlight suddenly turning on. You desperately do not want to make a bad impression. This is exactly when our little purple friend anxiety wakes up from its nap. It senses your inner panic and completely overreacts to the situation. Anxiety immediately smashes the panic button inside your amygdala. This ancient alarm system cannot tell the difference between a hungry tiger and an awkward handshake. Your poor brain instantly drops everything it was doing. When survival mode is fully activated, abstract tasks like memorizing a name are immediately canceled. Think of your working memory as a tiny, fragile desk. When the amygdala floods the room with stress hormones, it simply flips the entire desk over. Anxiety forcefully grabs the steering wheel. It completely forces your brain to focus entirely on escaping the uncomfortable social situation rather than listening properly. This creates a very cruel and ironic loop. The harder you try to forcefully force yourself to remember the name, the faster you actually forget. You stand there intensely squeezing your mental muscles, trying to magically summon the forgotten word. But you are just generating more and more anxious noise. Every single ounce of effort you put into remembering just feeds the anxiety monster. It grows bigger, blocking any remaining access to your memory archives. It is exactly like trying to fall asleep. The more you angrily command your brain to sleep, the more stubbornly awake and alert you become. Your brain is desperately scanning empty folders, but the filing system is completely locked down by the heavy security protocol of your own social nervousness. So please, take a breath and give yourself some grace. You are not losing your mind, and you are certainly not a rude, uncaring person. You are simply a human being whose neurobiology is temporarily overwhelmed by the completely normal desire to be liked and accepted by your peers. But what if I told you the name was never actually lost in the first place? Let us uncover the absolute truth about encoding failures. People constantly complain to me saying, "Neo, I have a terrible memory. I keep losing names." But what if memory is not the problem? To truly understand this, we need to look at the three distinct steps of creating a permanent memory: encoding, storage, and finally, retrieval. Most of us completely blame the third step, retrieval. We think the name is safely stored inside, but we just cannot seem to pull it out. However, psychological studies reveal that the vast majority of name amnesia is actually an encoding failure. The name never even made it past the front door. You are frantically digging through your mental filing cabinets, getting frustrated because you cannot find that specific file with the new person's name on it. But the harsh scientific reality is quite simple. You absolutely cannot retrieve a digital file that you never actually clicked save on in the very first place. Imagine typing a brilliant essay on your laptop, but suddenly the power goes out before you hit the save button. The essay is just completely gone. When you desperately try to remember a name, your brain searches the hard drive and simply returns a massive error 404, file not found message. Your inner memory assistant is not being lazy. It is literally searching through completely empty folders because the audio data was never converted into memory. Sometimes we feel like the name is right on the tip of our tongue. But for new names, this is often just a frustrating mental illusion. Your brain did successfully encode their face, their smile, and their posture. So you falsely assume that their name must definitely be in there too. While your visual cortex was busy auto-saving high-definition images of the interaction, your auditory cortex just let the name float away into the background noise. So please, stop telling yourself that you have a broken memory. You do not have a retention problem, you simply have a temporary attention problem. Once you realize that your attention was just hijacked by social anxiety, you can finally stop feeling so terribly guilty about forgetting a random word. Now that we clearly understand the mechanical glitch in our operating system, how do we actually fix it? Let us learn some clever psychological hacks. The absolute best way to force your brain to hit the save button is the immediate echo. You must repeat their name instantly. By saying it out loud, You use both your motor cortex and auditory cortex, creating a much stronger neurological pathway in mere seconds. So when they say, "Hi, I am Alex," you immediately reply, "It is so great to meet you, Alex." It is simple but incredibly effective. This simple repetition acts as a VIP pass, pushing the abstract audio data straight past the busy bouncer into your short-term memory vault. Hack number 2 is the bizarre bridge. Since your brain loves visual data, you must manually attach a ridiculous image to their new name. If you meet someone named Matt, instantly imagine them aggressively wiping their shoes on a giant welcome mat. The weirder the image, the better. Your hippocampus absolutely loves bizarre, highly emotional, or funny visual imagery. It acts like superglue for that otherwise boring, abstract, floating, random sound. Suddenly, the name is no longer just a floating, invisible ghost. It now has a solid, hilarious shape, making it much easier to file away. Hack number 3 is spaced retrieval. Try to naturally use their name one more time right at the end of your conversation. It is crucial. Saying, "It was really wonderful talking to you, Alex," sends a final confirmation signal to your brain to move it to long-term storage. But let us be completely realistic here. Even with all these clever psychological tricks, you will inevitably still forget names from time to time. When that happens, simply use the honest recovery. Do not panic, and definitely do not try to fake it with awkward generic pronouns anymore. Just warmly smile and say, "I was enjoying our conversation so much that your name completely slipped my mind. Could you remind me, please?" Honesty instantly disarms the anxiety monster. It removes the stressful social pressure of pretending, bringing your working memory back online immediately and fully. Vulnerability actually builds much deeper human connections than fake perfection ever could. People appreciate honesty far more than a flawless memory. Trust me. So, the next time you meet someone wonderful and immediately forget their name, please do not panic. Your brain is not broken or failing you. You are not secretly a terrible, selfish person who does not care about others. In fact, it is often the exact opposite situation. Your name. Amnesia is actually proof that your brain is working incredibly hard. It is busy analyzing their smile, their tone, and their safety. Your ancient survival system simply prioritized deep emotional connection and safety over memorizing a completely random, abstract sequence of auditory sounds. It is perfectly natural. Even your little anxiety monster was just trying its absolute best to protect you from the terrifying spotlight of social judgment. It means well. We put so much immense pressure on ourselves to be absolutely flawless in every social interaction. But perfection is simply an impossible, exhausting illusion. Human connections are fundamentally messy, a little bit awkward, and entirely beautiful. A forgotten name does not ruin a genuinely warm conversation. Trust me on this. People will rarely remember exactly what you said, and they might even forget your name too. But they will always remember how you made them feel. If you bring warmth, presence, and pure honesty to the table, a tiny memory glitch will just become a funny moment to share together. Your memory library might occasionally misplace a file or lock a door, but it is constantly trying its best to record the truly important things. So take a deep, comforting breath. Let go of that heavy guilt. Give your brilliant, hard-working mind the grace and patience it truly deserves. Thank you so much for joining me today inside the wonderful, chaotic world of the human mind. I hope you found some comfort here. If this video helped you understand yourself a little better, please share it with a friend who also suffers from chronic name amnesia. It really helps. This is Neo, your friendly neighborhood mind decoder, signing off. Remember to be kind to yourself, and I will see you in the next video. Disclaimer: the information in this video is for reference only and does not replace professional psychological advice. If you are struggling mentally, please reach out to a professional or someone you trust.